Changes might be coming in the Lone Star State. Will the Stars move on from Jason Robertson? And can the Devils put their name into the running? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast. Here at the Locked On Network, I'm your host, Kyle Chalky play announcer, Devils Rider Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time Credential Media member, Trey Matthews. When this episode goes live, Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final will already be in the books. Who's going to go up 1-0? Well, as I am recording this episode, I do not know, but here's my prediction. I got the Panthers repeating as champions. I have them beating the Oilers in 6. Collectively, I think they're the better team. Obviously, they got a bunch of former Devils players on their roster. Then again, you got Adam Henrique. He's still hanging around the Oilers, but I just think the Panthers are just the better team. But the Oilers do have better individual players in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But that's my prediction, and we're not here to talk about the Stanley Cup Final. This is a Devils-sanctioned podcast, so let's talk about the Devils news. In the first segment, we will listen into a controversial take by Daily Faceoff reporter Frank Seravalli, because there's a clip making its way around social media that has the Devils discourse up in arms. Then in the second and third segments, we will talk about Jason Robertson and the possibility of the Devils making a blockbuster move that could give them a boatload of scoring. But before we get into that, let's talk about the controversial take made by Frank Seravalli recently. I will play the clip and then share my thoughts on the matter. Take a listen.
The New Jersey Devils, who are up on our list, Frank, and you look at their offseason preview board here, $12 million in projected cap space, but with that, 19 of 23 players signed. They need a backup for Jacob Markstrom, unless they just give Nico Dawes that job. But all the D-men pretty much locked up, need a new deal for basically just Luke Hughes. The point I'm making, that $12 million, if he wants it to just be fun money, it can almost just be fun money for Tom Fitzgerald in the sense he can use it to just upgrade. There's not really a lot of internal housekeeping. So what kind of upgrade do you think the New Jersey Devils are looking to make?
They weren't a very tough team to play against.
Okay.
That's the one thing that stands out. They need size, they need brawn, and they certainly could use some of that on their back end. I actually thought the price was rich at the time, but Brian Dumoulin, he came in and played pretty well and chewed up some monster minutes for the Devils. I thought a second-round pick was a lot given the moment in time and given the market for him, but they were willing to strike first, and they definitely need some luck in health and consistency. Curious to see what they do for their backup goalie position as well. As you mentioned, Jake Allen, he's kind of the belle of the ball when it comes to free agent goalies this summer. So, look, I think the number one priority for the Devils has to be get players who make it more difficult to play against them. Brendan Dillon, love him, but he's not enough. You need more guys like him, and you certainly need more forwards that are going to grind and make life difficult on opponents.
Okay, those comments are so wrong on so many levels. Here's some things that stood out for me. The first being is that the Devils are not exactly small when it comes to defensemen. With the exception of Seamus Casey, all their defensemen are at least 6'1" and weigh 190 pounds. So length is not an issue. The Devils were 10th in the entire NHL for most hits by a team this season, 1,929 to be exact. So the narrative that the Devils need to get bigger, stronger, or they didn't really challenge their opponents all that much, I'm just like, that's such a poor take. Did you not watch the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs? You probably didn't, because you thought that the Devils were going to be handled with ease. But the fact of the matter is that the Devils competed really hard against the Hurricanes. Yes, they lost in 5, but 2 of those games went into double overtime. I said if the Devils were going to go down, at least go down swinging. And that's exactly what they did. That doesn't happen if they were just an easy team to roll over. So I think that narrative needs to be put to bed. Paul Cotter also broke the team's single season hits record. So last year, it was a point of emphasis for the Devils to get more physical and add some guys that aren't afraid to throw their weight around. That's why they got Paul Cotter, Stefan Nason, Brendan Dillon. They got more length in Jonathan Kovacevic, who I said was very underrated and was going to become a good player for the Devils. On top of that, the Devils only allowed 220 goals this season. That's the 5th lowest in the NHL. Sometimes offense was tough to come by with their lack of depth scoring because the Devils ranked 20th when it came to scoring goals themselves. So their defense and their goaltending was not the issue. Yes, they're going to need to find a backup goalie because Jake Allen, he's probably going to go where the grass is greener because he is set to get a pay increase. And if you just buy out Andre Palat and re-sign Jake Allen, that's not a good strategic move if you're Tom Fitzgerald. I think the Devils will be just fine when it comes to goaltending because you still got Jacob Markstrom for another season. Nico Dawes was really good in the few games he appeared in. You also got Mike Yegorov. He's in the pipeline as well. So I don't think that's really a big issue for Fitzgerald because he's got a solid goaltending tandem. You don't have to put all the pressure on Dawes' shoulders because Markstrom is still there. He was going to be the starting goalie with or without Jake Allen. And I'm sure the Devils will explore the open market, but as we all know, sometimes getting a goalie is tough to come by. So I think Frank Seravalli's comments are just a lack of paying attention to the Devils. It's one of the reasons why I brought it up in my conversation with Jim Behringer in yesterday's episode. I said, do you think that the Devils get the short end of the stick when it comes to coverage because they're a small market team? It's one of the reasons why I love PK Subban so much because he's an ESPN analyst and he gives the Devils a much bigger spotlight. So I was just really confused when I saw that video of Frank Seravalli basically saying that the Devils need to get more size, they need to get more physical, they need to add bigger defensemen because they didn't challenge anybody. Look, it doesn't hurt to add more physicality. I've said that before, but I don't think that's the main issue for the Devils this offseason. They just need to get more depth scoring. So I'll leave it at that. You're free to disagree with me, but those were the comments made by Daily Faceoff reporter Frank Seravalli, and obviously it left the Devils discourse a little ticked off, but let's talk about something more positive. Could the Devils pursue Jason Robertson from the Dallas Stars? We'll talk about that momentarily, but before we continue, let me tell you guys about Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller all day long. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's a perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm at my desk or at the airport, I just love having a snack by my side. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Okay, let's talk silly season. Could the Devils be in the running for Jason Robertson? Where did all these rumors circulate? Well, a few days ago, NHL analyst Kevin Weeks posted on X a picture of the American Airlines Center and basically did his eyes emoji thing. I don't know about you. I love Weeksy, but I usually take those types of posts with a grain of salt because he did the same thing for the Devils last year. And I'll just say this, it took like weeks or maybe even months for the Devils to do something. If you see that type of post from Kevin Weeks, speculate with caution. But it doesn't change the fact that Robertson might be out the door for the Stars. According to James Nichols of New Jersey Hockey Now, he wrote this in a recent article. He said that the whispers began on Tuesday, led by NHL insider and Daily Faceoff host Jeff Merrick via The Sheet. Merrick explained that the Stars could make Robertson available via trade. They want to create cap space and recoup draft capital. Going into the final year of a contract at $7.75 million average value, Merrick believes the Stars could use the space to go big game hunting in the free agency market, but perhaps at a different position. The truth of the matter is that the Stars acquired Mikko Rantanen and then paid him $12 million annually for the next 8 years. Robertson's role changed. Now that the Stars are eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs after reaching the Western Conference Final again, Dallas could be headed for an identity change. So if I had to basically make an educated guess as to why Kevin Weeks posted what he posted on social media, I think one or two things are going to happen. Maybe Robertson will be traded, or maybe the Stars will make a coaching change. Will former Devils coach Peter DeBoer actually be shown the door? Hey, that kind of rhymed. Only time will tell. But I'm actually quite intrigued when it comes to Robertson. He's 25 years of age. He will turn 26 in July. He was really good with the Stars. In fact, he's been good with them for the past few years. But obviously, things have changed now that they got Mikko Rantanen on the roster for the next 8 seasons. This year, Robertson appeared in 82 games. He had 35 goals, which ranked first on the Stars. He had 45 assists, 80 points. He was second in assists and points, just behind Matt Duchene. He scored 26 even strength goals, first on the team, 9 power play goals, second on the team. He had 45 blocks, 9th on the team, 60 hits, 7th on the team, 24 takeaways, 5th. He had an offensive point share rating of 7.1, first, a defensive point share rating of 1.9, 8th, giving him a point share rating of 9, second. He had an expected goals for rating of 56.3, third on the team. Here's a scouting report on Robertson. Born in California, he was a big scorer in junior hockey and is wasting no time showing he can do the same at the NHL level. I think he's already proven it. He knows how to find openings in an opponent's defense and get his shot away quickly. But he is also a fine playmaker who can keep defenses honest. His play away from the puck is still a work in progress, and he needs to improve his quickness and fill out physically. Long-range potential, big, high-scoring winger with upside. Remember, I just said he's 25. He will be turning 26 in July, so there's always room for improvement. This is interesting because he's down to the final year of his 4-year deal with the Stars. He has a cap hit of $7.75 million. Is this doable for the Devils? Is this something I would like to see them do? The answer is absolutely yes. And here's why. In the third segment, we'll talk about potential trade options that the Devils could turn to. But for the time being, here's why I think this might be doable for the Devils. It's because he already has a contract. Other players I talked about when it comes to my silly season discussions, Sam Bennett, he's a pending UFA. And the market is going to be rather high for him because he's arguably been the Panthers' best playoff performer this season. He could get a big-time contract, and some people are concerned that it might turn into another Andre Palat situation. Or you look at someone like Marco Rossi, he's already an RFA. And how can the Devils get him? Could it be in a sign and trade scenario? Or could the Devils offer him a bridge deal and then just hope that the Wild don't try to match it? No, that's not going to happen either because the Wild can easily match a bridge deal. And how can the Devils create the cap space in order to sign Rossi to a new deal? Like I said, I would love to have Bennett on the Devils roster. I think he's a good scorer and adds a lot of physicality, but the asking price might be too high. Marco Rossi, same thing, just different circumstance. He needs a new deal, and you can't just offer him a bridge deal. The Wild still have some control over him. What do you do then? As for Robertson, final year of his 4-year deal, even if he's a rental player, that could play into your favor because maybe the asking price won't be as high as people are making it out to be. That could be a hot take, but rarely are trades eye for an eye. Like I said, we'll talk more about this a little later, but here are my overall thoughts once again. Absolutely, 100%, I think the Devils should pursue Robertson just because I think it's doable. He still has a contract in place, and we talked about how the Devils need depth scoring. Well, another way they could try to get depth scoring is the trickle-down effect, as in you add Robertson to the roster, you move somebody down, there you go. Now you got scoring up and down your lineup a little bit more, similar to what we saw with the Tyler Toffoli situation a few years ago. I said like Stefan Nason, really good player, but maybe the Devils asked a little bit too much out of him to play on the same line as Nico Hischier and Timo Meier. Nason, a very good bottom six player, but you can't really expect that much out of him when it comes to scoring. He's even admitted to that. So bottom line is, out of all the silly season discussions I've conducted so far, this one seems the most doable, and it's for a really good player. So I think this is something the Devils should definitely look into, and they should go all in for Robertson. Now, when we talk about going all in for Robertson, what would that look like? Well, my boss, Nick Villano, over at Pucks and Pitchforks, actually wrote an article on the matter. I will leave a link to the article in the description if you want to check it out. He said the Devils have a treasure trove of defenseman prospects. It starts with Shimo Nemec, the former second overall pick, who showed he deserves to be an NHL player this past postseason. Dallas needs serious upgrades on the right side. Nemec would change everything for their defense. Imagine if he pairs with Miro Heiskanen. They could turn into the best pairing in the league. Beyond Nemec, the Devils also have Seamus Casey, Anton Salayev, Ethan Edwards, Tobias Veland, and Daniel Karpovich. Nobody would be surprised if any of them became regulars in the NHL one day, some sooner than others. Having depth on defense in the prospect pool is important. All right, before I talk about players that might be on the hot seat for this particular trade, let me just say the Devils need to clear cap space either way. That's a priority for Tom Fitzgerald. That's already been established. So I have no doubt in the back of my mind that if they were going to try to pursue Robertson, they would certainly try to clear cap space either way, whether that's buying out Andre Palat, trading away Dawson Mercer, Erik Haula, maybe looking into Dougie Hamilton a little bit more. You never know. But we know that the Devils are trying to get some more money on the table. They have $12 million in cap space to play with, but Luke Hughes' contract is definitely a priority. So let's get the basic stuff established before we talk about this potential big deal for the Devils. Going back to what Jeff Merrick said recently, the Stars want to create cap space themselves and recoup draft capital. And the Devils, while they don't have draft capital, they don't have a first-round pick in this year's draft, they have a lot of young prospects I'm sure a lot of teams would love to have on their roster. I just listed a few, like Seamus Casey, Shimo Nemec, Ethan Edwards, Anton Salayev, you name it. The Devils have young assets. Year by year, it does get a little smaller. I think a prime example would be after the Timo Meier trade a few years ago, because the Devils seem to be more willing to sacrifice some of their younger assets. But look, you want the Devils to be competitive, that's the sacrifice you're going to have to make. So I guess let's talk about like the state of Nemec, Casey, and Edwards. Let me just start by saying I love all three of them. Originally, I said that Nemitz might be on the hot seat just because he was in the AHL. He was an all-star there. He didn't seem too happy to be there. But you know what? If you were playing in a lot of NHL games the year prior, I'm sure you'd be a little ticked off as well. But after his performance during the playoffs, he's won a lot of people back over, including me. I don't think it would be easy to trade him as it once was. Ethan Edwards, he recently signed his ELC. Seamus Casey, I still see a lot of potential in him. He's one of the smaller defensemen on the Devils roster, but he has a lot of upside. Let's get that established. So I'd be willing to move on from one of those defensemen because the reality of it is the Devils have a lot of defensemen signed long-term. They got Dougie Hamilton, Jonathan Kovacevic, Brendan Dillon, Jonas Siegenthaler. Obviously, Luke Hughes will be given a bigger contract within the next few weeks, month or so. We'll see what happens, but it's basically a logjam, and I don't think you could keep all three. You might have to make a difficult decision. And if someone like Robertson is available and the Stars aren't like asking for like a big name player, but just trying to get some more cap space and more draft capital, then you might have to take advantage of that opportunity, because I'm sure a lot of people are saying like, well, maybe the Devils will include Jesper Bratt or Timo Meier, which won't happen. Looks good on paper, but according to Jeff Merrick, that's not what the Stars are going to be asking for, reportedly. So we'll see what happens, but I think the Devils should certainly give this a look, see what young assets you could give up, and the Devils got to clear up some cap space either way. So I would love to see the domino effect. Which piece is going to fall first? Tomas Tatar is already off the books, but he was a pending UFA and he was signed to the vet minimum, so it doesn't really help or hurt all that much. But Fitzy said he wants to make some moves. Hey, maybe go after Robertson. This might be a golden opportunity, but let me know your thoughts. Do you want to see the Devils go after Robertson? Who are you willing to sacrifice? And do you have another player in mind? I'm talking all things silly season throughout the course of the offseason. So if you have a suggestion, maybe I'll do an episode centered around that player. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.